A landmark climate deal reached in overtime at the COP28 summit in Dubai after 2 weeks of intense negotiation. For the first time ever, nearly 200 countries have signed off on a pledge that explicitly calls for a transition away from fossil fuels such as oil, coal and gas. Now, delegates erupting in applause after the COP28 president announced the agreement at the final plenary session. Sultan Al Jaber calling the accord a historic one, but he cautions that it's only good if it is implemented.
We have delivered a comprehensive response to the global stocktake and all other mandates. Together, we have confronted realities and we have set the world in the right direction. We have given it a robust action plan to keep 1.5 within reach. It is a plan that is led by the science.
Several countries cheered the deal for achieving something that has eluded climate talks for decades. But others warn that while it is a good step forward, it's simply not enough.
In a multilateral venue, to have as strong a document as has been put together, I find, is cause for optimism, cause for gratitude, and cause for some significant congratulations to everybody here. I am in awe of the spirit of cooperation that has brought everybody together.
We have come to the conclusion that the course correction that is needed has not been secured. We have made an incremental advancements over business as usual, when what we really needed is an exponential step change in our actions and support.
Julie walks us through the details of this latest deal and how it has changed from previous drafts.
It's a whopping document, more than 20 pages long and packing nearly 200 clauses. And inside, it's got the lowdown and how we are doing with emissions, getting ready for climate change, and financing all these shifts. First up, a bold move. It's telling countries to pitch in and transition away from fossil fuels to avert the worst effects of climate change. Now, this is a big deal because it's the first time we've seen a direct call to cut back on fossil fuels, a key demand from many countries at this year's COP. Then there is a nod to the future. It acknowledges that emissions will peak down the road, but said that the date of this will be different considering how developed each country is. And it also admits the current levels of finance given by richer countries to help their poorer counterparts cope with climate change and switch to cleaner energy has been lacking. But it doesn't go beyond that to require that developed nations do more to address. Now, what are some of the crucial pieces that got dropped from the text? Well, they include the mention of phase down of fossil fuels, levels of oil and gas productions, and reference to reduce methane emissions, which has been included in earlier text, that is. There's also no commitment on peaking emissions by 2025 as previously drafted. So it's a mixed bag, still many loose ends, but it looks like delegates are just glad to see COP28 come to a global agreement to mark the start of the end of the oil age.
With the final climate deal now done, work to transition the world away from fossil fuels will soon begin. Sustainability and the Environment Minister Grace Fu says that this final outcome from COP28 may not please every party, but it represents a significant stride towards global collective action. She was speaking to reporters about her key takeaways from Dubai.
Are we totally happy with all the elements in there? The answer is no. But is it the package that is significant and meaningful to us? I think it is. And I think ultimately that's the test. A good outcome is where everyone goes back a little bit unhappy, but still happy to have a package. The fact that we have language on fossil fuel subsidies, for example, is significant because this was also an element that many parties did not want mentioned, given that, at this moment we are all facing cost of living issue, inflationary pressures. But the fact that it was mentioned in there, again, I think it's something that we're glad to see.
What she wasn't so glad to see was the lack of movement on what's known as Article 6 of the Paris Climate Agreement on the rules of engagement around voluntary carbon markets. This comes as Singapore inked several deals during the 12-day summit to generate and buy carbon credits from countries including Papua New Guinea, Senegal and Rwanda.
On Article 6, we are disappointed that there was no progress. We will have rules. We will have to rely on rules and guidelines from COP26 and 27. But to facilitate a high integrity and robust carbon markets, we would want to work with like-minded countries and partners to develop the frameworks needed, building on our existing efforts such as the Climate Action Data Trusts and Implementation Agreement. And this will be able to support countries in their implementation and not hold up climate action.
For more on the implications of COP28 for Singapore, we speak with Shireen Fock, partner and head of our impact plan at KPMG in Singapore. Ms. Fock, thanks so much for joining us on this bulletin. Now, this deal agreed today to transition away from fossil fuels. Now, we heard the minister there talking about issues with cost of living, inflationary pressures. And these are things Singapore, as an economy highly dependent on energy. We are host to a large logistics hub, a petrochemical industry and power generation sectors. Now, what impact will this deal have on Singapore's economy?
So the move from fossil fuels is definitely going to be impactful to our economy as we know it. But when we talk about Singapore being a logistics hub, I think we have also transited the term of logistics hub from, say, 50, 60 years ago. We remain very central to many parts of trading of physical goods, but more and more so in the last 20 or 30 years, our strategy as a country has been to move into high-value services, including financial services, as well as technology flows and innovation flows. So in that sense, there is a shift in our economic construct, and therefore also as a way of mitigating the impact to the country. As for the energy-intensive industries that we are still responsible for as a logistics hub, I think the energy efficiency as well as the supercharged power grid plans that we have as a country will be helpful in changing the source and the makeup of the energy use that we need.
Ms. Fock, what about its implications, the deal's implications for Singapore's green transition and our net zero targets, which we also have? There is an irony here. Some of our sustainable solutions, they are energy intensive as well. We've got plenty of urban farming and more sort of opportunities and encouragement for that sector. We've got our desalination plants as well. How might this deal change things, if at all, for Singapore and its pursuit of its climate goals?
So I think we need to look at the climate goals in relation to a bigger picture around where Singapore stands in the global economy and what this actually means for us as a country in terms of our competitive advantage. While we have moved into ways of securing, for example, our water sources, and for us to be able to be competitive in a digital age, the move to data centers, for example, is important and critical. And we are looking at achieving a good balance between the different needs of the economy, equity, social equity, as well as energy use. And again, the way that we balance these different components in terms of the kind of energy efficient equipment that we use, as well as the sources of energy, that will be an important part of the mix.
All right, Ms. Fu, we heard the Sustainability and the Environment Minister Grace Fu expressing her disappointment at the lack of progress on Article 6 of the Paris Climate Deal. Now, that specifically refers, if there had been progress, we would have seen updates in the regulations around the generation and buying of carbon credits from countries. Now, Singapore, showing our faith in that, we have inked several deals in just this particular summit alone. So the lack of progress, the lack of update, that means the reliance on old regulations from COP26, COP27, what impact might that have on Singapore's intentions in this particular arena?
I think it is still really significant what we have achieved in COP28 this time round, and fossil fuels being one of the biggest areas which we need to tackle in terms of the redistribution of energy and use of it. But the lack of progress on Article 6 clearly is rather disappointing. But it doesn't stop Singapore from doing what we need to do and within what we can control. So our voluntary signatories and agreements with different countries on carbon trading, it falls back to us to be able to honor these promises and to be able to demonstrate how we actually fulfill these responsibilities and build trust in the ecosystem. Because a great deal of why the climate agenda could not progress, other than the fact that we may have some limitations around technology and geography, it is really back to absence of trust, perhaps, around countries when we are negotiating what would this mean for the economy and for the people. And for Singapore, having progressed so far in the carbon trading and the carbon agreements, it is a strong signal to us that we must continue to move ahead and let not perfection become a limit to progress.
Oh, thanks so much for those insights. Shireen Fok from KPMG Singapore.